It started with water. On a December morning, the stillness was broken by a discovery so horrifying it defied comprehension. Imagine waking up in a small coastal town to the rhythmic waves of the ocean, where life moves slowly and faint sounds of water offer a sense of calm. Newport, Oregon was just that kind of place, a peaceful retreat far from the chaos of city life. On December 19, 2001, a man in a Waldport RV park near Lint Slough made a chilling call to the police. A small body, dressed only in striped underwear, was floating face down in the cold, muddy pond, a mile inland from the Pacific Ocean. The boy had dusty blonde hair and appeared to be around 4 to 6 years old. There were no visible injuries, no clues to his identity, and most disturbingly, no one in the area had reported a missing child. Local authorities released an enhanced photograph of the boy to the news media in hopes that someone would recognize him. No one could have imagined what would come next. 3 days later, the case took an even darker turn. Divers searching the slough near a narrow bridge uncovered a shocking find: a pillowcase weighted with a rock. Not far from it, the lifeless body of a young girl emerged. Like the boy, she wore only underwear, her small frame weighed down by a rock in a floral print pillowcase tied to her ankle. Obviously, the boy had been weighted in the same way, but he had broken free from his pillowcase and floated to the surface. Both children were heartbreakingly young, their faces hauntingly similar. Investigators began to suspect the worst. These were siblings, their innocent lives taken in a manner too horrifying to comprehend. Yet this was only the beginning. As the days passed, authorities scrambled for leads. Their breakthrough came when a couple who occasionally babysat for a local family saw the photo of the boy on the news. The child looked like 4-year-old Zachary Longo, the oldest of 3 children belonging to 29-year-old Christian and 34-year-old Mary Jane Longo. The family lived 12 miles north of the crime scene. They had recently moved to Newport from Ohio. Zachary's younger siblings were still missing, as were their parents. By now, police were treating the case as a criminal investigation. A search of the Longos' last known residence, a rented condominium by Yaquina Bay, revealed troubling signs. The unit was abandoned. Personal belongings, including baby clothes and family photos, were scattered in a nearby dumpster. Authorities dredged the waters near the condo complex, hoping for answers, but fearing what they might find. On December 27th, their worst fears were confirmed. Divers recovered 2 large dark green suitcases from the waters beneath a marina ramp near the Longos condo. The first suitcase had strands of human hair visible through the zipper. When it was opened, investigators found the body of a woman, bent into a fetal position. It was Mary Jane Longo. She had no clothing, and an autopsy later confirmed she had been manually strangled. The second suitcase held the body of 2-year-old Madison. She was wearing a diaper patterned with frogs and had also been strangled. Inside the suitcase was a dumbbell and some of her clothes, as if someone had tried to make the space feel less harsh. Investigators connected the dots and declared the children's father, Christian Longo, a person of interest. But by the time police made this announcement, Longo had disappeared. Who was Christian Longo, really? And could the chilling claim he later made at trial, that he wasn't the only one responsible, hold any truth? We'll unravel the answers right here on Out-Channel True Crime Journals. As police pieced together Christian Longo's trail, a disturbing picture of his life began to emerge, one filled with lies and deception. But how could lies lead to the death of 4 people? To the outside world, Christian Longo had it all: a loving wife and 3 beautiful children. But behind Christian's boyish charm and polished demeanor lay a man whose desperate need to maintain the illusion of perfection would result in devastating consequences. Christian Michael Longo was the kind of person who could win people over in an instant. Handsome, articulate, and seemingly devoted to his family, he exuded confidence. He was raised in Ypsilanti Township, Michigan by strict Jehovah's Witness parents. At just 19, he married Mary Jane Baker, a woman 7 years his senior, who was deeply committed to her faith as a Jehovah's Witness. Despite his age, she found Longo exceptionally mature. Together, they built what appeared to be an enviable life. Mary Jane, a stay-at-home mom, doted on their 3 children. They were often seen together, Christian with his easy smile and Mary Jane with her quiet devotion to their family. Christian's charm extended to his professional life, where he initially appeared to be a successful entrepreneur. He co-owned a construction cleanup business with another Jehovah's Witness, and for a time, it seemed like things were going well. But Christian's appetite for a lavish lifestyle far outpaced his income. He created false billing statements to convince Mary Jane their finances were stable. He even made fake bank statements to hide the fact that their accounts were nearly empty. His lies didn't just deceive his wife, they deceived everyone. When Christian's father invested tens of thousands of dollars in his failing business, he did so believing in the success Christian had fabricated. Christian Longo's life had always been built on appearances. Behind the charming smile, he harbored a dangerous addiction, not to drugs or alcohol, but to the thrill of deceit. His first taste of this came early in his marriage. When Christian proposed to Mary Jane, he couldn't afford the 3.5-carat diamond ring he wanted for her. Instead of admitting his financial limitations, he stole $108 from the camera store where he worked to make a monthly payment on the ring, though he returned the money the next day and resigned, because as he said, his conscience got to him and he felt he'd learned his lesson. This small act of theft set a pattern that would define his life. He was obsessed with creating the image of a man who had made it, and who could also provide the best for his family. He bought new cars, went on tropical vacations, and even acquired a boat and jet skis. But these luxuries came at a cost. By the time the couple had their first child, Zachary, Christian was already drowning in debt. He maxed out credit cards and forged checks. Even the family's vehicles were part of the illusion. When their car was repossessed, Christian stole a Pontiac Montana minivan from a dealership, using a fake driver's license to take it on a test drive he never returned from. To keep up the ruse, he fabricated billing statements for the van, convincing Mary Jane it was legitimate. When creditors started closing in and Mary Jane began asking questions, Christian doubled down. He assured her everything was fine, even as he sold stolen construction equipment to make ends meet. Mary Jane, ever faithful, stood by her husband despite his mounting lies. But even she couldn't ignore the growing strain. In May 2000, she discovered emails to another woman suggesting Christian had been emotionally unfaithful. When she confronted him, his response cut deep. He admitted he no longer loved her and accused her of being no fun since they had children. Mary Jane turned to the elders in her congregation for support, reporting her husband's behavior. Christian was once again sanctioned by the Jehovah's Witnesses, a devastating blow to someone who had been raised in the faith. Despite these betrayals, Mary Jane stayed. Perhaps she believed her husband could change, or maybe her faith compelled her to keep the family together. By 2000, Christian's business had collapsed under the weight of his reckless spending. In a desperate attempt to keep up appearances, he began printing counterfeit checks. This act of fraud landed him in court, where he pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 3 years probation. But Christian's concern for appearances never waned. He inflated his income so much during the proceedings that his restitution payments were far beyond what he could afford. Humiliated and now disfellowshipped from the Jehovah's Witnesses, Christian faced growing isolation. As creditors circled, he decided it was time for a fresh start. In 2001, the Longo family packed up and moved across the country to Oregon. But the move didn't bring the fresh beginning Christian had hoped for. Their living situation became increasingly unstable, with the family staying in makeshift accommodations, including a warehouse in Toledo, Ohio, before heading to the West Coast. Yet Christian assured Mary Jane that everything was under control, using charm and false promises to keep her from questioning him. By the time they arrived in Newport, Oregon, they were financially and emotionally depleted. In Newport, he convinced the manager of a luxury condo complex to let them move in without a deposit, claiming he was a telephone company employee waiting for a paycheck. In truth, Christian had no income and was barely scraping by. He took a part-time job at Starbucks in a Fred Meyer variety store, but maintained the illusion of success. To co-workers, he presented himself as a wealthy entrepreneur, living off a lucrative internet business who simply loved coffee. The reality was starkly different. He was stealing gas, pawning stolen goods, and struggling to pay for even basic necessities. For someone like Christian, who thrived on control, the thought of losing everything was unthinkable. One night, he stood on the balcony overlooking the dark bay, the weight of his lies pressing down on him. He later described this moment as the beginning of the end. Lies have a way of catching up with you. For Christian Longo, they began as small, Desperate acts, a stolen ring, a forged check, but quickly snowballed into a tangled web of deceit that ensnared not just himself, but everyone around him. With each new fabrication, the stakes grew higher, pushing him closer to the edge. But Christian Longo wasn't the type to accept failure. As his web of lies began to unravel, the question was how far he'd go to keep the truth hidden. But no one, not even those closest to him, could have predicted what he was about to do. December 16, 2001, was a cold, quiet night in Newport, Oregon. That evening, Christian and Mary Jane had an argument that, according to him, escalated into an emotional confrontation unlike anything they'd experienced before. He later claimed he spent the night confessing many of the lies he had told about their finances, their stolen van, and their precarious living situation. Mary Jane became fed up. Longo said that she berated him for 45 minutes, slapped him, and told him she would never be able to trust him again. Christian awoke on the morning of December 17th to find Mary Jane in a state of distress. He claimed she accused him of destroying the family and told him, "You did this. You killed us." Christian's version of events grows more chilling from here. He alleged that Mary Jane had taken the lives of their two oldest children, Zachary and Sadie, in a fit of rage before turning on him. He described finding Mary Jane vomiting and his youngest daughter, Madison, lying unresponsive in their bed. He claimed this prompted him to lose control and strangle his wife, and later kill his youngest child. But the evidence paints a different picture. Sometime between December 16th and 17th, Christian strangled Mary Jane with his bare hands. Her autopsy later revealed signs of blunt force trauma to her face, suggesting she may have struggled against him. Next, he turned his attention to Madison, their 2-year-old daughter. He initially attempted to smother her, but when that failed, he resorted to strangulation. But Christian wasn't done. In the early morning hours of December 17th, he loaded Zachary and Sadie, still asleep, into the family's van. He drove to the Lintslau Bridge over the Alsea River, a quiet, secluded spot not far from their home. What happened next is almost too horrifying to imagine. Christian tied pillowcases filled with rocks to the children's ankles, and while they were still alive, threw them into the freezing waters below. Autopsies later revealed that both Zachary and Sadie died from asphyxiation and drowning, their final moments spent in terror and confusion. Over the next several days, Christian's behavior was unnervingly calm. On December 18th, he attended a Christmas party at his workplace, gifting one of his co-workers a bottle of Mary Jane's perfume. He rented a movie from Blockbuster, played volleyball with friends, and went about his days as though nothing had happened. On December 19th, when the body of Zachary was discovered, Christian Longo was nowhere to be found. Using a stolen credit card, Christian purchased a plane ticket to Mexico, leaving behind the life he had built and destroyed in Oregon. Arriving in Cancun, Christian slipped seamlessly into the role of a carefree tourist. With his charm and boyish good looks, he blended in easily among the crowds of vacationers. But he wasn't just hiding, he was reinventing himself. And in a move as brazen as it was bizarre, he chose a new identity, Michael Finkel, a former journalist for the New York Times. Why Michael Finkel? The answer remains one of the many strange twists in Christian's story. Longo had admired Finkel's writing and saw him as someone whose life of adventure and storytelling was the perfect cover. Armed with nothing more than confidence and charisma, Christian began telling anyone who asked that he was a journalist on assignment in Mexico. He befriended other travelers and struck up a relationship with a German photographer named Janina Franca. Together they explored the ruins of Tulum, snapping photos. By December 28, 2001, Longo was officially charged with the murders of his wife and children and placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, while Longo's parents cooperated with America's Most Wanted. With the case making national headlines, tips began pouring in. One woman in Montreal recognized Christian from news reports and contacted the FBI after spotting him in Cancun. She met a man who introduced himself as Brad at a hostel in Cancun, but later he told her his name was Mike. Her information was the break investigators needed. On January 13, 2002, nearly a month after Christian fled the U.S., Mexican authorities and FBI agents closed in on his location at a beach camp in Tulum, about 80 miles south of Cancun. When agents approached him, Christian didn't resist. He calmly confirmed his identity. He remained composed, even conversational. According to FBI agents, he showed no signs of remorse or fear. Instead, he seemed almost relieved. as though the weight of his lies had finally been lifted. The trial began in early 2003 in Newport, Oregon. Longo pleaded guilty to the murders of Mary Jane and Madison, but he pleaded not guilty to the murders of Zachary and Sadie. This move was calculated. By admitting partial guilt, Christian appeared to take some responsibility while shifting the focus of the trial. The question was no longer whether he was a murderer, it was whether he could convince the jury that he wasn't the sole architect of the tragedy. The prosecution painted a damning picture of Christian as a manipulative narcissist who killed his family to escape the consequences of his lies. They argued that his financial desperation and desire for freedom drove him to commit the murders. One key piece of evidence was the condition of Zachary and Sadie's bodies. Autopsies revealed that both children had been alive when they were thrown into the water. Forensic experts testified that Christian's claims about Mary Jane's involvement were inconsistent with the physical evidence. Christian's defense team, meanwhile, attempted to shift the blame onto Mary Jane. They argued that she had snapped under the pressure of their crumbling marriage and financial ruin. Defense attorneys said that Joseph Longo, who raised Christian, is actually his stepfather. Christian's biological father was a violent alcoholic who abused his mother and beat Christian. Longo's testimony did little to sway the jury. His calm demeanor and calculated delivery were seen as manipulative rather than remorseful. Christian Longo was sentenced to death by lethal injection. In a final statement, he addressed the court saying, "I've made mistakes in my life, but I hope that someday the full truth will come out." This cryptic comment left many wondering whether Christian was hinting at secrets he had yet to reveal, or simply trying to maintain his image as a master manipulator to the very end. Longo was sent to Oregon State Penitentiary. On death row, Longo earned money by corresponding with a couple of gay men, engaging in intimate conversations over the phone and in letters. According to Longo, it's common for death row inmates to receive such offers from men seeking romantic connections with prisoners. These men were referred to as ATMs because they were known to pay generously for such interactions. In 2005, Christian reached out to the New York Times journalist Michael Finkel. For Finkel, this unexpected correspondence came at a low point in his career. He had recently been fired from the New York Times for fabricating details in a story. As he explained, there'd been an inflation of ego. I'd become so manic and arrogant that I assumed the rules of journalism no longer applied to me. What began as an unusual correspondence quickly grew into a strange and controversial relationship. Through letters and interviews, Christian shared his version of events with Finkel, painting himself as a tragic figure rather than a cold-blooded killer. He portrayed himself as a man who had made grave mistakes, but still sought redemption. Finkel, intrigued by Christian's charisma and complexity, eventually wrote a book about their interactions titled True Story. The book became a bestseller, but Christian's ability to manipulate the narrative left many questioning his true motives. Was he seeking redemption, or was this yet another ploy to control how the world perceived him? In 2011, Christian announced his support for a controversial idea, allowing death row inmates to donate their organs. He argued that prisoners like himself could contribute to society by saving lives. Ultimately, the idea was rejected due to ethical and logistical concerns. One of the most chilling aspects of Longo's connection with Finkel was his ability to manipulate even the smallest details. In their conversations, Longo often deflected responsibility for the murders, saying he had acted out of love, claiming he believed his family would be better off dead than living with the shame of his failures. But for many, these statements ring hollow, a testament to his ability to manipulate even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Longo told Finkel, "I'll never look at the bay again. I can't see the water." He recalled that while sitting on the beach in Cancun, flashbacks of a horrific scene replayed on the film of his mind. Overwhelmed, he ran away and began to weep, repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. He said he was ashamed to call his father and ask for money. Feeling too weak to take his own life, he couldn't see any solution and thought he was a failure, and he didn't want to leave any witnesses to his failure. He knew he was going to kill his family. He claimed that Mary Jane's death occurred during an intimate moment, and said it was then that he realized the opportunity to act. He stated that he didn't want to strangle anyone else, which is why he drove Zachary and Sadie in his minivan while they were still asleep. The children never woke up. Longo said he was wondering if they'd wake up and ask for mommy. How would he explain it? How would he get away with it? He couldn't answer those questions, and so decided it was too late. Finkel's relationship with Longo eventually took a toll. In interviews, Finkel admitted that their interactions left him questioning his own ethics and judgment. Despite his initial fascination, Finkel grew increasingly wary of Longo's manipulative tendencies, describing him as a man who could make you believe anything, until you stepped back and looked at the facts. On December 13, 2022, Oregon Governor Kate Brown commuted the death sentences of all 17 inmates on Oregon's death row, including Christian Longo, to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This decision was part of Governor Brown's stance that the death penalty is both dysfunctional and immoral. Do you agree with Governor Brown's decision? Or would the death penalty be a better form of justice for Christian Longo?